Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today it's going to be talking about Futuristic Folktales, a new piece of theatre, which is going to be on tour later in the year. And I'm joined by creative director and choreographer Charlotte Mclean. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello.
Writer Nelly Kelly. Hello, Nelly.
Yeah.
And composer Malin Lewis. Hello, Malin.
Hello.
So first of all, Charlotte, let's start with yourself, because you've given yourself the grand title. You tell us about Futuristic Folktales.
Futuristic Folktales, A Dance for Hope, is a new dance theatre production for the stage that audiences can experience watching two performers, one break dancer and one contemporary dancer on stage, sharing, telling, finding out the story of the first ever womb. And we don't know the story of the first ever womb, but we thought it would be quite fun to reimagine this creation narrative that's across many folk tales and cultures, and make our own version through dance, storytelling, words, music, light, everything really that you can throw onto a stage and create a show with. So yeah, that's where we started.
So we can tell by that it's multifaceted and obviously collaborative. Nelly, what's your involvement? Obviously, you say you're a writer, but you've got to, I guess, work with everyone else to kind of bring this thing to the stage.
Yeah, so normally I work as a playwright. So this is the first thing, the first dance project that I've worked on. So my process has been an interesting journey. I think it's been quite like cyclical, sort of handing words over, seeing what movement comes out of that, writing words from that movement, and then those words being turned into, so yeah, a lot of like back and forth, but it's been like a really interesting way of doing things, and sort of a learning that less is more words wise in a dance setting, which feels quite freeing actually. Yeah.
But you're involved in every stage. It's not as simple as previously you might have said, well, here's a script and you might adjust it a bit as perhaps the process went on, but here it's a lot of back and forth.
Oh, definitely. And it's very sort of led by what Charlotte's doing with the dancers. So they sort of were doing improvisations and having conversations around the topic. So pretty much all of the writing that's used has come from prompts that have come from that. Yeah, so it's pretty much just trying to capture what's happening in the room and find words that connect with that.
One of the things I love about theatre as an audience member is and speaking to people like yourselves, is the way it seems to be constantly developing. It never seems to be a set thing. You know, things can change, not just night to night, but from, you know, an afternoon to the evening or stuff like that. Malin, as composer, are you involved collaboratively as well and always in there? Are you changing things too?
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte got me involved first about a year ago now, and it's been such a nice process kind of being in there for the R&Ds, and I think a lot of the music has been born of these improvisations that we've done together. And we were chatting today, I was chatting with the producer, and we're saying about how the two have been born at the same time almost. They've emerged together, and the music, it's all bagpipes, fiddle, and synthesizers, analog synths. And yeah, they've kind of, the ideas and the melodies have come from these improvisations that have been recorded, and then they've been like turned into these giant washy kind of soundscapes. But it's been so valuable being there for that process, I guess, and like learning together and growing together.
So when you approach writing music in that way, do you come with a kind of blank sheet or a blank mind even to say, right, how am just going to fit the words and the dance as well? Or do you have some kind of idea about where the music's going to go?
I think it very much, it's been a fresh kind of start. And I think with all these things, you have kind of a toolkit that you've developed over your practice. But you have to approach every situation with an open, fresh mind. Otherwise, you end up making the same things and it becomes stale. So you've got to learn off each other and just listen to what everyone's doing. And I think that's worked in this time, and it's been really, it's come to fruition in the end.
And Charlotte, in terms of the choreography, is that the same? Is it a developing thing, or do you start with the story and then work things around it, or how does it work in that sense? What's the beginning?
Yeah, it's been a fun one this time round because yeah, it's almost like the question of the first womb itself. What came first, the chicken or the egg, or the story or the music or the dance or the light or the everything? We've yeah, I guess it came a lot, the idea to do Futuristic Folktales came a lot from the solo show that I had, and which was very much a kind of autobiographical performance that I performed in, and then to think about choreographing or making a work with other people, it's very much been about inviting other people into these ideas, instead of me kind of throwing my ideas onto them, especially with regards to some of the themes of kind of reproductive rights and body politics that are inside the work, kind of not the opinion and views that are not only that of my own have been quite rich and a very important part of the work. So yeah, I don't know what's the beginning, yeah, and what's the end. I think it's got to go on forever and keep transforming and keep developing. Even the dance itself is still in transformation, and I'm sure it won't look anything like it did in the run that we just finished now, tomorrow night. So that's quite exciting.
And I was thinking that it might be by the time, that it's going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival as well. And if people had, gone to see it tomorrow evening, what a kind of different show they might end up getting, which I think is exciting in itself. And Nelly, you mentioned that you haven't worked in dance before necessarily in terms of theatre. Malin, have you worked in dance before, or has it been more traditional type of music in a sense?
So I usually do performing gigs. That's my main thing with my band. I've done theatre before, and I've done a little bit of R&D with dancers, but this is the first sort of fully fledged dance project I've been involved in, and it's been so exciting. Like, it's such a lovely way to work, I guess. With the gig side of things, it's always so sort of like in my own head doing music, getting up on stage, whereas this is such a kind of like, with something really rich about sharing with people of different genres and different mediums, and kind of like bouncing off each other in that way. And it's so nice to work with dancers as well, because there's this shared non-verbal language of expression.
And when people go to see the show, is the music live?
Sadly not. I do love performing live with theatre. I think it's really magical, because of various logistics. The music is pre-recorded in this, but a lot of it, I was really conscious I didn't want it to feel like two separate things and like a track had pressed play. So throughout the music, there's recordings of the dancers speaking. There's sound effects that we've recorded from the room, from the dancers making those noise in their movement. And I've tried to blend them a little bit so that it breaks down those like barriers between the two a little bit. So yeah, I hope it's worked.
With your director's hat on, Charlotte, how do you even begin to bring all these things together? It must be so much more challenging than if you're doing your own show, as you said previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dealing and negotiating and conversing with lots of different artistic treasures has been a fun journey, but I've got a really great producer, Helen McIntosh. Yeah, she's the brains behind it all, actually. That's what I say. That yeah, we've worked together. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. It's been a journey that we've been thinking about before we even did the Fringe for my solo in 2022. So it was even kind of, I would say, at the end of 2021 that Helen initiated the spark inside. Hey, I know you're just starting to perform and it's going to have its world premiere soon, but what about the next thing? Shall we start thinking about that? And then I think spring 2022, before we even got to the Fringe for And, did the first residency for Futuristic Folktales. Helen and myself, in the studio, and Helen kind of there as support to just bubble up the ideas and see where it could begin. So yeah, it takes time, but yeah, the time has been finding the perfect bunch of people and creatives to come together. And yeah, there's been a journey around the hill and back, but we've got a great team. I would say, I think.
And for people who don't know, really don't understand, and I'm not sure I do, what is the role of producer in theatre? We kind of know, I think, what it is in cinema is that it has to go and, you know, kind of organise everything. But is it the same in theatre? Is there a more artistic role involved?
True. I mean, certainly with the work that Helen does, absolutely, it's terribly artistic. Like, Helen's almost been a kind of outside eye dramaturg for this work. She knows my work very well. She knows me better than I know myself. She knows the decisions that I would take. Not every producer is different. I think you can have a very organize the funding, pay the people, go home, write the application type thing. But Helen is very hands-on in the studio, kind of supporting everyone, making sure everyone's got a cup of tea and everything that they need, and is a very important voice. And it's great because we've known each other since yeah, I guess when I first started dancing. I took my first contemporary dance class at Scottish Dance Theatre in Dundee, because I'm from Arbroath, so it was just along the road for me. And Helen was the administrator. It was her very first job outside of uni. So we were both kind of these new people in these places, and yeah, I guess our relationship just started from there. And then she worked at Dance Space, and I worked at Dance Space, and yeah, it's been great because we've known each other for quite a while. So yeah, Helen's magician Helen. Yeah.
And I'm interested in collab. It's such a collaborative process. I can hear that already. Nelly, is there something about collaboration in that way that kind of, you've almost got to up your game? Do you feel a certain responsibility or things like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think it's like a really fun challenge. It's definitely a harder way to work as a writer, I think. Purely because you just have to like really get a sense of the people that you're working with. I think if I'm sort of sitting at a desk writing a play that is my voice, then, you know, I know my voice and I can sit and I can write to that, and that's fine. And I can make the characters in my head and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think you know, you've got to be in conversation with the people that you're collaborating with, and sort of learning their voice, and like and going with where their ideas are going, and sort of thinking how can I find the words that sort of serve what's happening across the collaboration. So it definitely kind of takes more building blocks to put it together, but I think it's a fun challenge.
And similarly, Malin, do you feel a kind of responsibility when you're working with so many different people that are not perhaps your area of expertise?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I absolutely love having those conversations and being able to discuss, like, for example, with music, it's like somebody will bring something to you, but they'll express it as a feeling rather than like bar 73, you know, can you do that instead? And I really enjoy that like fluidity of the work. And similarly, in terms of working with a director, I love the challenge of creating what's in their head, and the conversation and the dialogues around that. As much as I have my own vision and opinions for it, it's so rewarding getting your work to a point where somebody else is like, that's what I needed, or that's what I wanted. I didn't know it, but like making that happen is incredibly rewarding.
Do you almost all have to sorry. Oh, no, I thought something was saying that. Do you almost all have to learn each other's languages in disciplines in that sense?
Yeah, completely. It's I only started working in theatre and dance a few years ago, and it's been a steep learning curve. So it's lovely to be at a point where I feel like I know what's going on and the language and how to communicate all that stuff.
So you mentioned come up a couple of times, the idea of the circle, of birth, of the womb. Can you maybe go into some of the themes in the show and describe them? And actually, where do those themes start? Does that start with yourself as the kind of director and choreographer, and maybe have the inspiration behind the whole project?
Yeah, I think certainly with relation to the womb, that's what my solo and was about, in a bit of a kind of less obvious way, the experiences that I've had personally with my own womb and where that sits within the kind of politics of reproductive rights in the UK and wider. And then to think about making this show with other people, yeah, to think about what that womb is for others, and especially with regards to human reproduction. I think definitely at the stage of my life as the kind of socialized female body that I am, what that means for me to potentially in the future have children, and have a womb that I think might be able to do that. How is that for other human beings? And I was noticing, especially a few friends that I have from Poland, the kind of politics in Eastern Europe with regards to reproductive rights are very different here in Scotland. I mean, yeah, just that in itself, and then also lots of my queer friends, how they would potentially want to have children ecologically, if we should have children, for the kind of grace of the earth, what that is. So all these things were playing into mind when we first started the show. And yeah, I guess like Nelly said, with the words, like we've had all this research and all this ideas, build, and we've just kind of filtered it all out, and it's become kind of almost something that we can't explain. And it's like you keep coming back to yourself, Alistair, like what's the beginning and why are we here? It's almost as ethereal and cosmic as that, like no idea, but we're all here trying to make sense of all of this. And I think that's what the show is, or has come to be in the end, this kind of, oh, we are here, so yeah, what should we do about it? What is the future? Where is the hope? And what actions can we take? And we don't really say you should do this. This should be your beliefs on reproduction or reproductive rights or anything. It's a bit more, hey, yeah, okay, what are these feelings and where are they coming from? And because it's always in constant transformation, up, down, and around. So yeah, bit of that.
I think, again, going back to what theatre can do, which is different often to the other arts, is allow those conversations to change and develop over a period of time. Whereas if it's a novel or whatever it might be, it can be more stayed in time rather than developed. I think you said, Nelly, that this was less writing for you, and I'm interested in the process. Did you initially, in discussions, have a lot and then pare it down, or how did it work?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wrote lots for it, but yeah, it's sort of, I think, yeah, it's really nice to sort of follow a journey of like what's happening in the room with the dancers and the sort of stimulus that Charlotte was giving them, and what they were coming back with, and sort of yeah, getting to go in like so many different directions and write lots of little different bits, and then sort of be able to come back at the next stages of it and go, okay, what do we sort of hear and connects with how the piece is developing. And I think it's just a really sort of nice exercise in having like so much material, but actually like being able to like distill it in like a few words in a way that still feels like it kind of captures what that journey's been on. Yeah, it's lots of writing to then the end result actually is not a lot of writing, but feels like it captures that.
So is that a kind of editing process where you think, well, I can lose that, I can lose that? And do you kind of do that yourself, or is that a conversation with other people too?
Oh, I think that's definitely a conversation, I think, yeah, mostly sort of in conversation with Charlotte of what feels like it's working, what feels like it isn't working, and then can we try a bit more of this and a bit less of this, and yeah, sort of back and forward every time. It's sort of there's been like a version of it, having discussions of like what is needed and what isn't needed, and sort of knocking away all of the unnecessary bits to find what's left.
And Malin, as a musician, is it a kind of your job to almost reflect the themes, or how does the music become a part of it in the same way as perhaps the writing becomes a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, throughout the process, we've had this like metaphor as the bagpipe as our womb. This idea of it, just this earthly sound, this living thing, this bag that's full of air that's blowing into different reeds that make different sounds. And for me, I really want to just capture that raw, earthy sound of the pipes. And always this first noise that you get with the bagpipes, the first thing you hear is this doo when you strike them up. And that's just the drones, basically. You have to get air into the drones first. And I love that as like the first thing, like the birth, like this initial sound. And so that's a little bit of a theme that runs through it. And yeah, it's been a case of just honing what sounds suit the piece. And I think some of the pieces, the music leads it, and some of it is in response to what's happening on the stage or the kind of story that's being told. And we had loads of different kind of styles of things, some kind of like Vangelis inspired sort of synth stuff, up to kind of like Scandi style fiddle pieces. And it turns out that Charlotte likes the epic bagpipe stuff. So what's kind of left now in the show is this epicness, these kind of soundscapes that wash over you, that sometimes they're like a slap in the face, and other times it's like ASMR with bagpipes. And it's kind of, yeah, I hope it takes you on a journey. It's like this whole range of emotions.
I love that idea of Charlotte being in the background going, more bagpipe, I want more.
Which is talking for me.
I spend all this time doing other things, and it's like she just wants me to play a 2/4 march and walk back and forth.
And we haven't mentioned the performers as yet and their role in the collaboration. I mean, Malin, are they having conversations with yourself in terms of, what they're going to dance to? Or is that all down to Charlotte and her choreography?
Usually the music comes first, but I'm inspired by their movement and their energy. On a practical level, I think it's improvising together, and then I create a thing behind the scenes and then bring it to them. And sometimes we kind of explain bits, explain the structure of that piece. But I feel like everyone on this project's so intuitive that there has been quite little discussion of that, because it's just not been necessary. It's been like a lot of feeling like, yeah, this works.
And in terms of the choreography, Charlotte, did you have an idea about what they would be dancing to and what would be the soundtrack, or did that just develop with Malin's involvement? How did that work?
Yeah, it was, I guess I was interested in yeah, my history of Highland dance, which has been a rocky road to which I am now at peace with and enjoy. Hence the epic bagpipe sounds. Yeah, as well as kind of asking and wondering what other relationships people have to wombs. Also, how can I share this Highland dancing on a break dancer, Astro, and Oro, who has this kind of complicated relationship with gender and ballet, and then also is a contemporary trained. So sharing that with these dancing humans has been quite something. But it was actually Nelly who, yeah, we were at the first, I don't know, it was 2 years ago or something, we were at the first phase of finding who would be the perfect musician, and we actually had a great Italian musician lined up, and yeah, I think Italian and Highland dancing would have been another world. But Nelly was like, I know this great piper who played at my wedding, they're called Malin, you need to meet them, they'll be great. And we just met, and it was like, oh, we have the same kind of shared history of this Highland world, because I did a lot of the Highland dance competitions, dancing in them, and Malin was playing the pipes, so we were able to share this kind of childhood excitement or not so exciting world that we had, and then bring it into the now. And I was excited by what Malin was doing with this instrument that I confess, hated as a child, and up until about probably when I met Malin's music and I realized, hey, wow, you can play the pipes in such a different way and bring it into the now. Kind of what I was trying to do and what I am trying to do with Highland dancing, like question its heritage and where it comes from and the history and the glorified violence inside it as well, what that is now for 2024, and where do we want to take this tradition in the future, not even to sustain it or kind of keep it alive, but just where else can it go? Because yeah, the world is transforming so fast, and yeah, how we bring this kind of really Scottish thing into the now and into the future. So I'm glad Nelly got married and Malin played at their wedding.
Malin, that must be a lovely thing to hear, that you've converted someone, who for years had gone, oh, that's not for me.
That's my mission in life, is just to convert people to the bagpipes. No, it feels super symbiotic in that way. We have this shared relationship with the past and our tradition and our upbringing with that, and this tension that we felt of this practice that we adore, but the social and the kind of expectations that come with that and things, whilst having just this deep appreciation and love for the art form itself. And it feels so amazing to have someone else that has that, but in their own medium and things. And yeah, I really think that Charlotte and we have all managed to make something that brings those elements of our lives together.
And Nelly, this might be a bit of a daft question, but is it different writing for dancers than it is for people who are simply acting without any other kind of performance?
Oh yeah, no, it's very different. It's very different. It's really interesting, I think, but like, yeah, I mean, it also is interesting in terms of like actors will want more words and dancers will want less words.
They want the big speech.
Yeah, no matter how much you write for an actor, quite often it's like maybe there needs to be more in there. And dancers, it's like, well, maybe we don't need that much. So that's a big difference. But I think also it's really interesting to see how dancers embody words, like while they speak them on a stage, like they put them into their body in a different way. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fun in playing with like what words you can use that give them the sort of freedom to do that.
Yeah, so that almost changes your writing for them, because you see that it's not purely they're saying your words, but they're almost expressing your words through a physical performance.
Yeah, or like, yeah, you kind of feel like you've landed on the right words when you can see that sort of feeling. Yeah, that's it's fun to play with, but definitely like a learning experience for me working with dancers for the first time.
And I was thinking that the term folk tales itself carries certain ideas and expectations. Was that something you wanted to tap into, Charlotte?
Yeah, I guess after reading yeah, a myriad of kind of different folk tales from different cultures and places, as well as the plethora of research that Nelly has done with regards to folk tales in for this show. Yeah, I think to see where those two worlds collided, this kind of folktale-y history, heritage, past, and this futuristic sci-fi, otherworldly, different universe kind of future, where they meet today in 2024 and what that is and what both those worlds are. And yeah.
And Nelly,
Futuristic.
Charlotte mentioned research. Could you tell us a bit about that? What kind of research did you do?
Yeah, so I mean, mostly reading folk tales from across the globe, but I was really interested in um, a particular book called The Hero's Journey, which was written by a Scottish guy, Joseph Campbell, and like inspired like Star Wars and stuff. And he had done a lot of research across folktales across cultures as well. So that's how I found my way to that book. But sort of reading that book was fascinating because he sort of made the argument that actually across folktales and across cultures, especially before, you know, globalization and sort of the internet and easy access to researching across cultures, he sort of wrote this interesting book about how essentially they all take the same structure, like how you can put folklores in the folk tales in this hero's journey and how they sort of morally go round the same sort of story points. And yeah, he was really fascinated about why that is and why across cultures we all morally are sort of looking for the same sort of wisdom in those stories.
Yeah, there's the same kind of arc in all of them. The points. I've heard someone talking about that just recently, and I cannot for the life of me think who it was, but that's really interesting. And it was the inspiration on Star Wars that reminded me, oh, that's that one, yeah. And in terms of, so when you've got a term like folktales, Malin, does that kind of think, oh, I know what's expected here? Or was it not that we actually pushing against those kind of expectations that people might have when they hear the term folk?
I think it's important to remember that like folk, which I often think musically is tied up with this word tradition. And it's like tradition and folk it's always being developed. Like folk that we do now and traditional stuff, it's a living tradition. It's not this old thing that's preserved in the past. It's an active existing practice that people do. And so I've often said, like in my work, that everything I do is going to be folk music. Even if I pick up a violin or a cello and start playing classical music on it, I'm still going to be a folk musician because I'm still translating into that language. It's like your mother tongue almost. It's like everything is going to be, everything's even translated into bagpipes for me, even when I play the fiddle. I still think of this 9-note diatonic scale that the bagpipes have that's kind of very simple. And it was, yeah, just like following on that idea of future and folk, that was the choice of pairing my sort of like rawest instruments of the pipes and taking the really raw sounds of that, not trying to do anything like really fancy playing on them, just like good drone music. And then taking these like dirty synthesizers and just trying to blend them as much as possible, trying to get them into the same language essentially. And yeah, that's been super interesting in itself, just playing with those textures.
I think it's really interesting. From my perspective, I think folk tradition in general in Scotland is being more embraced and welcomed than it was previously. And it maybe taps into what you were saying, Charlotte, about having a complex past with tradition. If I read what you said correctly, you know, in terms of dance or in terms of music or whatever it might be. And I think pieces of theatre like the one we're talking about now have really changed that situation, and there have been other examples as well. Do you all feel that this is something that's current and you know, and to be embraced, not just by performers and people like yourself, but by audiences increasingly too? Charlotte, you said, sorry.
Everyone's so kind. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what's going to be so exciting about the Fringe, is that we're going to have a different performer. Oral's going to stay the same, but Astro, the breakdancer, he's kind of got his version of the breakdancing version of the Fringe for him this summer, so he won't be performing in it. And to keep the cast alive and ever in transformation, and how they're going to pass down this kind of the folk story that we tell tomorrow night in Dundee, or when we go to Bern or Glasgow or London, what it will be each night, and how that transforms, and then how that's kind of transmitted to the next person, to the next performer, that can hold that tale and tell their version of the tale as well. So that's going to be where the liveness and the richness is each night, which is quite exciting. Yeah, I'm glad I get to see it every night.
Well, I mean, that's a great sign if you're excited by that, definitely. And if you've mentioned, we've talked about Edinburgh Festival, but you are touring elsewhere. I know you're coming to the Tramway in Glasgow, and I think you're going abroad as well. You're going to Europe too. So what, I mean, that must be hugely exciting, but it must be challenging also.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's a funny old relationship I have with Switzerland. I never in my wildest dreams when I graduated as a contemporary dancer thought, I tell you what, I'll be working in Switzerland. I hadn't even had it in my kind of periphery. But I ended up getting a job there in the capital in Bern, and then got a bit stuck there during Corona. So managed to kind of network and put my foot in the sand there, and grow some roots within the art scene there. So I'm really happy and proud to be able to share this work in Bern, as well as in Scotland and in London where I train. So that feels really great that it's kind of, we're managing to take it home to all of these homes that I've had. So that's great.
And it must be challenging though as well to take a show like this on the road, or is it quite manageable in terms of where you can put it on?
Challenging. Yeah, I guess I didn't answer the question, because I suppose we've yeah, there's the most challenging thing about it, I think, is just making sure that we've got the right coloured dance floor, which is just white, because we've taken everything out. We had kind of 2 microphones as part of the show. We had some maybe extra crazy costumes, and it's just really been about reducing, taking away everything. I think because we've had so much time to play and so many people to play with, we've exploded, and we've went through all the ideas, and now we're just reducing it down. So yeah, I mean it's going to be challenging for the performers to do it every night, but yeah, I'm feeling more excited and challenged, and a bit numb with excitement too, and very strange to not be performing in it.
Yeah, I bet.
Gonna have to do like a little dance to get rid of all my energy before. But yeah, that's a new thing for me, to be on the outside and observing it. So
And
lucky me.
Malin and Nelly, now that it's touring, are you still kind of closely involved in that, Malin? Let's start with yourself.
I am going to be following them around as much as I can. But yeah, essentially it's quite a weird thing actually, like kind of signing off on the music and setting it free in the world in that way. Perhaps changes will be made, but essentially it's finished now. And so that's quite a nice thing because you get to sort of step back and look on at that work. And as somebody that usually does the performing and the live sound myself, it's nice. It's going to be a really lovely process, I think, to actually sit back and get to watch that show for one of the first times.
Oh, excellent. And Nelly, yourself, is there going to be last minute changes and things like that, or is that pretty much it settled for yourself?
Oh no, it's settled for me. I hope so.
That's say that.
I better not speak too soon. But yeah, no, that's I get to just sit back and see how it goes now.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to all of you. You've really excited me for the show, and I'm sure you have for our listeners as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.